So, we're talking about active reading techniques, and what we want to look at now are what I've written down as four questions, four active questions that you can ask a book as you're reading through the book. So, here's the four questions I've got written down. Now, bear in mind, before you even begin, a question is a quest. I remember hearing that years ago, and I've never forgot it, that a question actually begins now a quest to find answers, to find knowledge, to find understanding, and ultimately to gain wisdom in your day-to-day practice of life or how to look at the world or whatever it is that you are after in reading your book. So a question is a quest. And now here are four questions you can ask a book in order to gain something out of it. Question number one is, what is the book about as a whole? Question number two, what is being said in detail and how? And question number three, is the book true in whole or in part? And finally, question number four, what of it? Who cares? Does it matter? So, four questions you can ask to be actively thinking through the book. Now, I got a book right here. This is The Intellectuals by Paul Johnson. So let's just have these four questions in mind and do a little bit of a breakdown on this book. So it tells us it's called The Intellectuals. So automatically when you ask the question, what is the book about as a whole? His title is telling you, well, as a whole, it's about people who are considered intellectuals. That's a very broad scope answer to the question. What is the book about as a whole? Intellectuals. And it says here as a subtitle, From Marx and Tolstoy to Sartre and Chomsky. So maybe you know some of these people. I remember when I first looked at the cover of the book, I thought, well, I know about Karl Marx, I know about Sartre, Jean-Paul Sartre. I don't really know much about Tolstoy, and I can't really tell you anything about Chomsky. I haven't a clue who this person even is, really. But Johnson says that he's one of the intellectuals. Then on the back of the book, we can get another bit of an idea of what the book is about as a whole. It says, according to Norman Podhoretz from the New York Post, this book is, quote, so full of life and energy and fascinating detail and so right for the moment that anyone who picks it up will have a hard time putting it down. Now, the editors of the book, the publishers, gave us a little blog on the back. And on the blog on the back, it says, a fascinating portrait of the minds that have shaped the modern world. In an intriguing series of case studies, Rousseau, Shelley, Marx, Ibsen, Tolstoy, Hemingway, Bertrand Russell, Brecht, Sartre, Edmund Wilson, Victor Gollancz, Lillian Hellman, Cyril Connolly, Norman Mailer, James Baldwin, Kenneth Tynan, and Noam Chomsky, among others, are revealed as intellectuals, both brilliant and contradictory, magnetic and dangerous. Now, that's a marvelous little blurb on the back, and so maybe you've heard of some of those people as well. Edmund Wilson or Bertrand Russell or Hemingway. So that's all there to give you an indication of what this book is about as a whole. And some of the adjectives used on the back are quite intriguing. Intellectuals, both brilliant, contradictory, magnetic, and dangerous. So again, that is a very general sense of what the book is about as a whole. Now, our question number two, what is being said in detail and how? Now, we know from the back we have a list of people. So the details are in the biographies of the individual people that are listed on the back of the book. In addition, it says that it's an intriguing series of case studies. Now, Johnson tells us this in the introduction where he says what his goal is to relate the teaching or the message or the ideas presented by each one of these people and then relate it to their actual lived lives. What did they do in their life as a whole? And so he covers really the scope of who these people are, who their parentage is, a bit of the culture from which they come from, and then all the way up through their writings, all their different interrelationships with people, and then their deaths. So in detail, that's what's being said. Each individual person is being analyzed as to their life setting, and then what they wrote, and are the two actually harmonized? Do they work together? Number 3, is the book true in whole or in part? Well, that's an interesting question, because now you're dealing with the concept of truth. Is something true in whole or in part? So when you deal with these people, bear in mind, this is Paul Johnson's explanation and interpretation of who these people are. Really, and in the process of doing this, he gives you a fairly in-depth bibliography. All the footnotes and everything else in the back of the book for each chapter give you all of his sources and references and things. I know for someone like Shelley, I didn't really know anything about the guy, but he wrote a rather long paper when he was a student about a defense of poetry. And so I found that and started having a look at it, and had some interesting thoughts about his view on poetry and who poets are and what poets should be and the level of society in which we live and that kind of thing. So this would be a marvelous springboard for additional study. So maybe somebody that you've really enjoyed in the past, their writings or their ideas, this would be a good starting point to say, well, okay, I've heard a lot about Bertrand Russell. I've heard a lot about Ernest Hemingway. I understand that Tolstoy wrote War and Peace. Who were these people, and what was it that they said? Now, whether or not what he presents is true, or whether or not what the person who is being examined, what they are teaching is true, that's for you to decide in the process of going through these people's biographies, and then to relate it to what your understanding of truth is. And that's a whole nother subject. How do you know that you can discern truth and that you're not being deceived yourself? That's beyond the scope of this particular lesson. I'm just pointing that out as one of the quests that you're on. Is the book true in part or in whole? So that's a determination that you need to make. And then finally, what of it? Who cares? Does it matter? Is it necessary for me really in the end? I found this book actually, by the time I got about 2/3 of the way through it, it was getting a bit tiresome, because as Johnson was presenting these people, remember on the back it says that the intellectuals are both brilliant, contradictory, magnetic, and dangerous. And it was almost getting to be a bit of a broken record by the time you got to the end, where I was like, do I have to wade through another person that's a liar and a cheat and somebody that is revered by certain people, but their lives are depressing? I mean, these people, it's some of these stories are sad, and you think to yourself, why are we lifting these people up as intellectuals when they actually lived very sad and depressing lives that I really wouldn't want to live myself? I wouldn't want to live that kind of life, even though they were renowned in their day. So the question of what of it really boils down to, how much of this book do I want to incorporate into my own way of personally living or thinking or functioning or analyzing the world around me or anything along those lines, in order to rightly live out wisdom. So there is right wisdom and there is wrong wisdom. And wisdom can be defined as application of knowledge or application of understanding. So when we read these books, these are why these are very active questions, and they're questions that force us to think beyond just the data presented in the book. And now I've got this information that I could spout out at parties and make people think I'm clever or knowledgeable or something. No, there's something being presented that will affect how we live our life and affect the people around us. So these active questions are there to challenge you to bear that in mind as you're reading the book.